Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. There are a lot of people on the line, 87 people so far, and we're really excited, and it's great to see so much interest in this topic. Welcome, and we hope you enjoy our presentation today. Just a few items before we get started. You are all on mute for the duration of the presentation, but please feel free to share any questions that you have with us using the question box that you should be able to see on your screen. This webinar is being recorded, and the slides will be shared with you after the presentation is over. My name is Salima, and I'm joined today by Lily, and we are the Research and Evaluation team at Prosper Canada. For those who don't know, Prosper Canada is a national charity dedicated to expanding economic opportunity for Canadians living in poverty through program and policy innovation. If you're interested in learning more about us and the work that we do in the field of financial empowerment, please feel free to check out our website at prospercanada.org. Today, we are going to be discussing a new online tool that we developed in partnership with the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada with generous funding provided by the Canadian Bankers Association. It is our hope that this tool will help organizations that are currently running financial literacy and coaching programs to conduct more rigorous outcome evaluations. Today we're going to cover 4 major topics. First, we will go over why we think using tested measures as part of an evaluation is important. We will then introduce you to our new financial literacy and coaching outcome evaluation question tool. We will go over how this tool will better help you to evaluate your programs. And lastly, we will briefly discuss why we decided to develop this tool in the first place. We will also be leaving significant time to address your questions at the end of our presentation. So let's jump right in. I'm going to hand it over to Lily to talk about tested measures.
Thanks, Salima. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. When we evaluate programs, we are collecting data to determine how well the program has been implemented and to find ways to improve it. These are commonly called process and outcome evaluations. A good program evaluation draws on many types of data, including surveys, administrative data, interviews, and focus groups. Surveys are a popular data collection tool because they are inexpensive and can be administered to large numbers of people. The data you get from these can also be fairly easily analyzed. You've probably used them in your own work many times. When we conduct a survey, we're essentially asking a series of questions to participants so that we can learn about the outcomes of a program. Survey questions are such a central part of the evaluation process because they are used to measure outcomes of interest, like saving or spending habits. Survey questions measure those outcomes in many ways. 2 common ways are through scales and individual questions. A single survey question can be designed to measure a single outcome, or a number of questions can be used together in order to measure a more complex outcome. This is referred to as a scale. For example, a single question may not be able to measure the concept of self-confidence. One question may tap into the behavioral aspect of confidence, but not the emotional part of it. Using a carefully selected and tested group of questions together, you may be able to get a reliable self-confidence score. Since survey questions measure outcomes, it is important to use good questions.
So what exactly makes a good survey question? In order to collect good information, a survey question must be relevant, consistent, comprehensive, and accurate. A survey question is considered to be relevant if it addresses an outcome that you care about and can be easily understood by your average participant. Basically, does this question measure something that is important to you? For example, if you are trying to assess a saving for retirement workshop and you come across a question that asks about TFSAs versus RRSPs, this would be a relevant question. If there was a question about RESPs, however, this would not be relevant for your program. This is a very common sense requirement of survey questions to participants. A survey question is thought to be consistent if it is interpreted in the same way every time it is asked. For example, if I were to ask you if you were stressed today and provided you with the option to answer super stressed or very stressed, you may answer super stressed today and very stressed in a week, even though you do not actually feel any less stressed. It is very difficult to define what the difference is between super stressed and very stressed. This is a poor way to ask this question and could lead to inconsistent results. Many times, evaluators get around this problem by asking about a similar concept with many different survey questions through a scale. Your answers to all of these questions combined would then provide an overall score. When you take this scale many times, you would get a similar score. This would then be a consistent way of measuring a certain concept like stress. A survey question is comprehensive if it addresses all key components of an outcome that you care about. A single question can rarely capture all the components of a complex topic, so instead, we use scales. And lastly, a survey question is accurate if it properly measures the outcome that you care about. So how do you ensure that you have a good survey question? Many rounds of testing. Survey development is a complex process that involves many steps and many participants. On the slide, you will see a typical example of the full process that questions go through in order to be relevant, comprehensive, accurate, and consistent. Now that you've seen how complex that process is, you may be wondering how much that would cost you and your organization. A great question. If a scale was developed using the process just shown and involved testing with 1,400 participants, it may cost you around $65,000. Some scales go through an even more extensive process involving thousands of participants, making the development of the scale much more costly. For example, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Financial Well-Being Scale was tested with over 15,000 respondents. So if you don't have thousands of dollars to spend on survey development or literature review, what do?
Diverse organizations have already put time, effort, and money into developing survey questions that measure outcomes for financial literacy and coaching interventions. The online tool that we have developed will connect organizations like yours to these tested questions. The survey questions provided on the tool will allow organizations to conduct rigorous outcome evaluations by helping them generate good data through high-quality measurement. The tool covers a wide range of financial topics for organizations that run programs on financial literacy and coaching. The topic areas addressed by the tool include tax filing, budgeting, safe and affordable banking, saving, credit, debt, making wise decisions as a consumer, planning for a comfortable retirement, self-confidence regarding financial management, and insurance. The questions come from a wide variety of esteemed international academic and publicly funded institutions, including Statistics Canada, the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in the United States, the University of Wisconsin-Madison Center for Financial Security, and the Center for Financial Services Innovation in the U.S. We've also included a number of questions from sources developed by the nonprofit community in Canada. The online tool will provide users with a suggested set of survey questions and scales that can be used in an outcome evaluation of a financial education, coaching, or counseling program. There are two options for accessing the questions. The first option is a guided screening process. Users can choose to go through a guided process where the tool will suggest some survey questions and scales based on answers to a few screening criteria. These screening criteria will ask about different aspects of the program being delivered, program outcomes of interest, as well as evaluation capacity. Based on the responses, the system will suggest a number of questions and scales for the user to choose from. The user can select whichever scales and questions they feel are most appropriate for their program and participants, and then review their selections. The system will then allow the user to download their selections as a Word document or Excel file. Let's take a closer look. On your screen, you will see a mock-up of what the guided process will look like. Please don't be too concerned with the colors of the user interface. This is simply a mock-up to show you roughly how the information will be presented on the final version. When you enter the tool, you will select the screening questions option. And this will bring you to a page where you will answer 8 questions about your program. There will be appropriate options to choose from, and you will pick the ones that are most appropriate for your program. The tool will then take you to a number of suggested full scales and additional questions that you can choose from to develop your own survey. You will be able to select the question or questions associated with each full scale or additional question. You can even delve into more detailed information. Once you have selected the questions and scales that you are interested in, you can export your choices into a Word document or Excel file. You can choose to download detailed information or just the questions themselves. The second option for accessing survey questions is to browse. The Browse option will allow users to search for questions relating to a specific outcome area or originating from a specific instrument. The option is for the more experienced evaluator who knows what kind of information they are looking for and doesn't need the system to suggest certain questions for them. On your screen, you will see a mock-up of what the Browse pathway will look like. Again, this is just a mock-up, so don't worry about the user interface. The final tool will be user-friendly and streamlined. You can choose to search for an outcome area or an instrument that you are interested in. For example, I might be interested in seeing all questions about improving credit scores. The process of choosing relevant questions is more or less the same as that of the screening criteria option. And as with the screening criteria options, you can export your chosen questions into Word or Excel.
To better illustrate how the tool works, we are going to use Rebecca as an example. She is a program manager with a community-based organization. Rebecca is running a financial literacy program that offers modules on decreasing debt and increasing savings by developing budgeting skills. Rebecca and her team believe that increasing participant knowledge about budgeting, debt management, and saving is important for their financial health. Rebecca's immediate outcomes of interest are increased participant financial knowledge and skills, not the longer-term outcome of changing participant behavior. She will use the tool to build a survey that she can use to measure the immediate outcomes of debt, saving, and budgeting knowledge and skills. The screening process will guide Rebecca to relevant survey questions. She will first be asked how she would measure the success of her program once it ends. She would answer that she would measure whether or not her participants have gained knowledge and skills that enable responsible financial decision-making. She will then be asked what her program is accountable for in the short term. Her program is accountable for the participants gaining knowledge and skills about financial topics. Rebecca will then be asked to identify the financial topics that she directly addresses with her participants. The organization's financial literacy program addresses the topics of creating and managing a budget, saving for a financial goal, and reducing debt. Rebecca will then be asked to identify the purpose of her evaluation. After discussion with her team and senior management, they decide that they are not only trying to provide accountability to their funders, but also improve the effectiveness of their program. When asked if they would be collecting objective financial information over time, Rebecca responded that they would not be. Rebecca and her team would like to conduct a pre-post analysis of the data they receive from their participants. So, when she was asked about how often they would be collecting data, she answered at least twice for each participant, at the beginning of the program and at the end. Her program is not a coaching, counseling, or problem-solving program, and so she answered no to that question when asked. And lastly, Rebecca was asked if her organization was compliant with Canada's Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act in protecting the security and confidentiality of her participants' personal information. Rebecca and her team are currently working on becoming compliant, and so she indicated that in her answer. After the screening process, Rebecca would receive 3 full scales and 25 additional questions to choose from. What you can see on your screen is the survey that Rebecca developed to give to her participants. It includes the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau Financial Wellbeing Scale, as well as 1 question from the Consumer Financial Services Innovation Financial Health Indicators and Prosper Canada's Financial Literacy Evaluation Resource Kit. You will see Part 1 of the CFPB scale on the screen now. The scale presents a number of statements and asks participants to rank how well the statement describes or applies to their situation. For example, let's look at Statement 3. Because of my money situation, I feel like I will never have the things that I want in life. Let's also look at Statement 7. Giving a gift for a wedding, birthday, or other occasion would put a strain on my finances for the month. And lastly, let's look at question 14, which was the additional question that Rebecca thought was important to include from the Center for Financial Services Innovation. They pair their answer options with colors to indicate a financially healthy or unhealthy answer. Question 14 states, when you think about saving money for the future, which of these time frames is most important to you? The next 5 years or longer, the next year or few years, or the next few weeks or months?
Now that you've seen the tool, we'd like to talk a little bit about why we developed the tool in the first place. As many of you know, the process of designing a good evaluation can be complex, time-consuming, and expensive. There are many excellent evaluation toolkits available that help users design evaluations. However, because toolkits are rarely subject-specific, they tell users how to set up data collection tools, but don't provide guidance on specific outcomes and measurements. They can't tell you what questions to use to measure your outcomes. And as we've discussed, you need good questions in order to get good data that will allow you to improve your program. Our new online tool fills this gap by connecting users to tested questions and scales that are specific to financial literacy and coaching programs. And since good questions allow you to measure outcomes effectively and consistently, the tool will help you with steps 4 and 5 of a typical evaluation process by helping you measure the outcomes associated with your program theory. In so doing, it will help you build the data collection tools that you will need in order to build an effective outcome evaluation with your participants. Moreover, consistent measures enable comparisons across programs with similar goals.
If you use the same questions or scales to evaluate similar programs within your own organization, you can compare the effectiveness of these programs. This can allow you to improve your program and begin to demonstrate causal links. If the financial education and empowerment field begins to use the same questions or scales to evaluate their programs, then we can begin to define best practices, share knowledge, and encourage policy using a clear evidence base. This tool presents an opportunity for the field of financial education and empowerment to start developing a shared vocabulary around measurement. It will be streamlined and easy to use, making the middle steps of your evaluation process much better and more efficient. It will also help you to conduct more rigorous evaluations that will help you to improve your programs for participants, and it will help us start to think about comparing programs across the field. When we are able to compare outcomes as a community of practice, it becomes possible to build our knowledge of what works, for whom, and why. Once we know this, we can better serve the communities that we work with. Thank you all so much for listening. That is the end of our presentation, and we welcome you to ask any questions that you have at this time. All right, so we're just getting some questions in. So one of the first questions that we've got here is, will this tool help me create an evaluation framework for my program?
So thank you so much for that question. So the tool is going to help you select the most appropriate questions to evaluate your program, and that will lead you to hopefully tangible program improvement. However, it's not going to create an evaluation framework for you, as it assumes that you're going to start with a logic model for your program. All right, another question we have is, when will this tool be available?
The tool will be up and running in November of this year, and it has no cost to accessing the tool. It is free and accessible online, and it will also be available in French. However, the French version will not be up and running until January of 2017. Another question that we've gotten in is, do you have any specific program that targets post-secondary students?
Thank you so much for that question. Unfortunately, at this time, we don't have specific questions that were tested with post-secondary students. You can use the questions, however, they haven't been tested specifically for that population, and we're hoping that in a future version of the tool, we'll be able to have questions that are aimed at specific populations of interest.
Sorry, everyone, we're getting a lot of questions in, so we're just trying to read them as quickly as we can. Okay, so we've got a great question here. Will data for comparison be available to see how our program is doing against a larger data set? That's a great question. Thanks for that, Kathy. The data currently will not be available. We are not housing any data on this specific tool right now. However, we are looking into different databases that are available that can house that kind of data and allow you to run analytics, but that's something that we're going to be looking at in a future phase of the project. Right now, we're simply looking to get the tool up and running. We also have a few questions about the literacy level of the questions included on the tool.
So the questions have been tested for a pretty broad literacy level. You can get more information on who each question has been tested with when you look at some of the more technical details of each question. So that information will be available to you. And also, at the end of the day, you'll have a lot of options of questions to choose from, and so you can pick which question you think is going to be best for your population or for the population that you serve as you know them. We have another question asking about whether or not these questions have been tested with low-income and Indigenous groups.
That's a great question. Unfortunately, as it stands right now, we don't have any questions that have been tested specifically for Indigenous groups, but it is something that we have identified as a major gap in the field, and we'll be looking towards in the future filling that gap by perhaps doing some of our own validation. However, all of the questions on this tool are relevant for low-income populations of some kind. You will have to go through the suggestions and decide whether it's relevant for your specific target group, but we do believe that they are relevant for low-income populations. Thanks for that question. We also have a couple of questions about if the survey questions available on the tool are relevant for financial literacy programs.
Yes, we do have a number of questions that are relevant for financial literacy, and depending on how you design your evaluation, if you do a pre-post, then you can use those questions to gauge whether or not people are sort of improving their knowledge as a result of your program. So now we have a question asking whether or not the tool is appropriate for both a one-time group coaching and one-on-one coaching to monitor financial behavior.
So if I'm understanding this question correctly, we kind of define one-time group coaching more as a financial literacy workshop program. If that's the case, then yes. If not, then we don't have anything specifically tailored for group coaching per se, although I'd be interested to learn more about what you mean by that. But there are absolutely questions available for a one-on-one financial coaching, counseling, and problem-solving programs, and those do help you monitor financial behavior changes over time. We've got another question. Do you have a resource list of literature that supports the various scales and questions of the tool?
So thank you so much. We do have extensive resources to support the scales and questions. We will link directly to documents prepared by the creators of the tool and of each tool and each sort of survey, scale, and question that we're including, and that should give you a really good sense of all of the work that went into developing it and also sort of the evidence behind the reason that they worded the questions the way that they did. And those will be linked directly through the tool.
We've got another question here about once you receive the exported Word document with your specific questions, is it up to the user to create the physical survey or does it generate an online tool? That's a great question. It will be up to you for now to generate your physical survey. The online tool will download a list of questions with the answer options for you, so you could theoretically leave it like that and then print it out and hand it to your participants, but it wouldn't. At this point, it does not populate an online survey that you could email out or use on a screen right now. But this is something that we are looking to include in a future phase of this project.
Sorry, just browsing our questions. Apologies for the delay. Okay, so we have one question asking, how will the tool be implemented at an agency level? Are responses from paper surveys inputted into a database through Prosper?
So as of now, we have no database that we are using to collect this kind of data, especially since we would have to get a lot of permission and your permission, of course, to collect that data. However, like I said, it is something that we're looking to include in the future and perhaps collaborate with other agencies in Ontario and across Canada that are already collecting this kind of information for other aspects of one's life and one's well-being other than finances. So that is something we're looking to include in the future. There's another question that says, one area that we face is student debt, and it's asking whether or not we address student debt in questions in this tool.
Thank you for that question. At the time being, we have a lot of questions about debt, but none that are specifically tailored to student debt. However, there are quite a few that ask about debt in different ways and that offer options to talk about certain amounts of debt, and so that could be applied in that setting. We have another question that asks whether questions will also cover socioeconomic development generally or if it's restricted to financial literacy.
That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. Right now, the tool is not restricted to financial literacy. It is applicable for financial coaching and counseling sessions as well. However, it does not address socioeconomic questions specifically. However, that is something that we can look into including in the future. If that's something that the field would like to include, we can put that on our radar for something to look in the literature for in the future.
So we have one question that asks, in addition to specific financial literacy info, we would also be looking for information about numeracy skills. Are there any questions about that? There are no questions that specifically test numeracy skills. The financial literacy questions that test knowledge are mostly based on subject area knowledge.
We also have a couple of questions of, can we add our own questions? And that's a great question. We would absolutely love for community organizations to nominate sets of questions that they have developed and tested and validated through an extensive process over the past a few years of their development. So there will be an option on the online tool for you to nominate new instruments for inclusion. However, there will be very high standards that they will have to adhere to, including evidence of construct validity, evidence of face validity, evidence of cognitive and user testing, and actual evidence of it being used in program evaluations in the past. Should it fit all of those criteria and should we be provided with enough information, then I don't see a reason why in our annual or biannual update of this tool that they would not be included on the tool in the future. We have a question about how do we analyze our results and share them in a consistent way?
So thank you so much for that question. So as we said in the webinar, we think that using sort of shared measures is one of the best ways to start enabling sharing across programs and across organizations. At the time, the tool gives you information on how to score the answers to scales. However, we don't have any analysis tools available on the tool. That's something that we're hoping to add. But I think that it would be great to know if there's interest in having a space where, a shared space where organizations can upload sort of their data if they're using these tools to collect them. And that's really important information for us to have so that we know whether or not that should be a priority for a second phase of this project. So thank you.
We also have another question. Do you have any tools for measuring the financial literacy before launching a financial education program? Thanks for that question. Absolutely, we have those kinds of questions. The vast majority of the survey questions included on this tool, in fact, I would say all of the questions included on this tool are designed for pre-post use. So you can use them beforehand to get a picture of where your participants are at and then compare your scores of your participants on that same scale or question after the program is completed. There are a few tools that have been developed specifically for needs assessment. If that's what you're looking for, a one-time snapshot of where your population is at in terms of financial literacy or well-being or financial capability. However, that was not the main target of the literature review. So we have a few, but they're limited at this time and are something, again, that we would look to include in the future.
So we have another question asking if Prosper Canada will collect data from organizations on a voluntary basis. So at Prosper, we're always looking to help build and foster community of practice in every way that we can. And at the moment, the tool is not equipped to house data. However, again, if there's interest from the community in sharing and housing data, using the questions on the tool, that's something that we're always looking to know, and hopefully we can develop that capacity in the future. But it's exciting to learn that there's that interest in the community.
Great. And we have another question of, will attendees to this to this webinar receive a link to the online tool once it's up and running, yes, absolutely, we will be sending that out to you as soon as the tool is up in November.
Okay, we have a question asking, what if we already have a set of evaluation questions that we normally use? How does the tool fit in there?
I think this is a great question and something that you should ask your in-house evaluation person or external evaluator that you work with. The current questions that you have could be fantastic, or they may not be as rigorous or proven or tested as some of those that the tool will suggest. We have gone through a fairly exhaustive process of consultation with an international group of experts and stakeholders, and we've reviewed the research evidence to compile and select the tested measures. However, it's up to you to decide which questions you would like to use. Obviously, we've outlined the importance of using tested measures, so that's a decision that you would have to make on your own as part of your program and your organization.
So we've also had a few questions asking about the scope of the tool, and so whether or not the questions will give you everything that you need to measure your program's success. So the questions on the tool right now are going to be really useful for evaluating the outcomes of your program. At the moment, however, we don't have demographic items or indicators that are going to help you measure the success of your implementation process. So this is really a tool for an outcomes evaluation, not a process evaluation. Again, this is something that we're hoping to incorporate into the tool for future phases.
And we also have a question about, can Prosper Canada recommend any other resources for agencies to use or courses to take for program evaluation and improvement? Yeah, no, absolutely. There are many resources available, including the CFED's Building Financial Capability tool. That's a great one. Our own financial literacy evaluation resource kit can help you to think about how to plan an evaluation, and then this online tool can help you to measure using that. There are a number of evaluation toolkits online. Youth Rex just released one that's specific to youth but can be applied to wider audiences if you take out the specific items that are only relevant for youth populations. There is the Kellogg Logic Model Builder, which we also find to be very useful. The United Way has a great primer on evaluation basics, and that's a document that we will be linking out to on the tool as well. And when the tool goes live, there will absolutely be links to that available, to all of these resources available on the tool as well. We have another question. Are all the questions used only online? No, actually, that's a great question. No, none of the questions are specifically for use online. You will be printing them out in whatever format that you like, or uploading them into your own survey instrument online, but we don't provide that functionality yet. Yeah, so you can manipulate those into whatever collection tool you like, whether it be paper or online, or you can even read it out loud to your participants. That's your decision.
Okay. So those are all of our questions. Thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate that you took the time to join our webinar, and also we really appreciate all of the many thoughtful questions that you asked. Really kept us on our toes for that second portion of the webinar. We are going to be sending you an email shortly with the presentation slides, an FAQ about the online tool, a follow-up survey where you can provide us with your comments on our presentation and the tool. And we will also post the recorded webinar online. Again, the tool will be launching in November, and we will send out the link to you when it does, and we really look forward to hearing your feedback. And if you have any questions, you can absolutely send them in to either Salima or myself. We're happy to talk to you after the webinar.